Imagine this. It's Sunday, May 18th, 2025. A really historic moment unfolds. The first American Pope, Leo XIV, is inaugurated. And we've got this great CNN report giving us a front row seat, basically.
Right, from the Vatican itself.
Yeah. And this isn't just, a Catholic Church thing. It felt like a global event. You had world leaders, huge crowds.
Absolutely, a massive gathering.
So our mission today really is to kind of unpack that inaugural mass. What were the core messages Pope Leo was sending?
And the symbols too, right? There's so much meaning baked into the ceremony.
Exactly. So thinking about the start of the day, based on that CNN report, what really jumped out?
Well, I think the sheer scale, first off, and the energy.
Okay.
CNN describes St. Peter's Square just packed, estimated, 100,000 people?
Wow.
Yeah. And you can almost imagine the sound, the Viva Il Papa chants as he arrived in the Pope-mobile.
Right. That must have been incredible.
And suggesting a lot of popular enthusiasm right at the start.
And CNN mentioned that detail, him stopping to kiss a child.
Yeah, that little moment. It projects that image of care, connection, very visual.
Definitely. And like you said, it wasn't just the faithful there. The attendee list was pretty high profile.
CNN pointed out some key figures. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Right. And also Ukrainian President Zelensky. There was even a mention of him shaking hands with the U.S. officials.
Yes, that handshake was noted. And also, interestingly, Peruvian President Dina Boluarte.
Ah, and that connects back to Pope Leo's own history, doesn't it? Didn't he serve in Peru?
Exactly. As a missionary and later a bishop. So her presence feels, well, potentially significant.
Yeah, you wonder if that signals something about his focus, maybe on that region or his past experiences.
It could. And just broadly, you had delegates from over 150 nations. It just underscores the global stage he's stepping onto.
It really does, that sheer diversity of representation.
It shows the range of issues he'll be dealing with. And that handshake, even if brief in that context, probably carried some diplomatic weight.
No doubt. Okay, so let's get into maybe the real heart of it, the homily. His first big address.
Right. This is where he lays out his vision, so to speak.
And CNN highlighted some key themes. First up, a really strong condemnation. Exploitation of the poor and the Earth's resources.
Yeah, that felt like a very clear statement right out of the gate.
Does that feel like a continuation of recent papal themes, or maybe a sharper focus? What's your take?
Well, concern for the poor, for creation, that's definitely been there, especially with Francis. But the directness, the word condemnation, it might signal perhaps a renewed urgency, or just his particular way of framing it suggests maybe a very proactive stance on inequality, environmental issues.
Interesting. Then CNN also flagged his call for unity, specifically within the church.
Yeah.
And they sort of interpreted that as maybe referencing those ongoing tensions, between so-called reformists and conservatives.
That seems a likely interpretation.
Yeah.
For anyone maybe not deep in church politics, broadly you have different views on interpreting teachings, the pace of change, that kind of thing. The fact that he felt the need to say it so explicitly right at the start.
Yeah, it suggests those divisions are, prominent enough to address immediately.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how he tries to navigate that to bridge those gaps.
And another point from the homily, according to CNN, rejecting religious propaganda and power plays within the church.
That one stood out too. It sounds like a strong signal about how he wants things to run internally.
How so? What might that imply?
Well, it could hint at wanting more transparency, maybe. Less internal politicking in the Vatican. Sort of a warning against using religion for, personal or factional gain.
Gotcha. And then there was the tone. CNN emphasized the humility.
Yes, describing himself as a brother, a servant of your faith and your joy.
Very much echoing Pope Francis's style, as they noted.
It does. That language, emphasizing service, humility,
Yeah.
It's a powerful way to connect.
What does that typically signal?
It likely signals continuity in that pastoral approach. The Pope as a shepherd, a servant leader, not just, the top authority figure.
Okay. Moving just beyond the homily text itself, CNN also mentioned specific prayers he offered.
For peace and justice.
A call for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, which is unfortunately still so relevant.
Terribly relevant. And him invoking that directly, it really underscores the church's role, or perceived role, as a moral voice internationally.
Yeah, it flags that conflict as a likely major focus for him.
Seems probable.
And then also prayers for Gaza, specifically mentioning the suffering there due to hunger. Children, families, the elderly, survivors.
Yeah, that was quite specific, highlighting the humanitarian crisis, the human cost.
Brings it home very starkly.
It does, and it reinforces that commitment
Yeah.
to advocating for the vulnerable, regardless of the politics surrounding the conflict.
Now, the ceremony itself, as
Yeah.
CNN detailed it, just incredibly rich with symbols. Let's talk about the pallium first.
Okay, the Pallium.
Described as this lamb's wool vestment, symbolizing pastoral care, the Pope as shepherd. CNN noted applause when he received it.
Right. That applause, it likely shows a real connection to what it represents. That responsibility for everyone's spiritual well-being.
And the lamb's wool itself evokes
Gentleness, yeah. Christ the Good Shepherd. So him visibly taking on that symbol, it's a powerful moment. Connects him to that long tradition.
Then there's the fisherman's ring,
Ah, yes. Very significant.
symbolizing his authority as St. Peter's successor. CNN mentioned the image of St. Peter on it, plus the engravings, Leo XIV and his coat of arms.
Exactly. It's that direct link back to Peter, the fisherman apostle.
Mm.
It embodies that whole line of succession.
Right.
And the personal engravings make it his specifically, his assumption of that historical spiritual role.
CNN also made an interesting comparison. A bishop's ring binds him to his local church. But the Pope's ring is like a betrothal to the entire church. That's quite a metaphor.
It really is. And apparently Pope Leo was visibly moved when he received it.
That reaction adds something, doesn't it?
It does. It kind of underscores the immense personal weight, the commitment he's making. Betrothal captures that lifelong dedication, that deep bond.
And it's fascinating that history, CNN mentioned, that the ring used to actually seal documents.
Right. A very practical function originally. Now it's ceremonial, but it's a reminder of the historical power, the evolution of the papacy.
These symbols aren't static, are they? They carry so much history.
Exactly. They evolve in meaning. The shift from sealing documents to pure symbol reflects how papal authority itself has changed.
CNN also touched on the scripture readings during the Mass, focused on St. Peter, apparently.
Yes, and a key passage from John's Gospel, the one considered foundational for the Pope's ministry as Peter's successor.
So a very deliberate choice, grounding his role right there in Scripture.
Absolutely. It reinforces the theological basis for his authority, his place in that tradition, right from the start, centering it on Peter, the rock.
And finally, just briefly, CNN mentioned the history, the move away from the coronation.
Right, the papal tiara.
Paul VI was the last one crowned, back in 1963, and he sold the tiara for charity.
He did. A really significant symbolic move.
Yeah.
Shifting away from those more sort of regal symbols towards service, humility.
And the tiara is now in Washington, D.C., they said.
Yeah, serves as a kind of tangible reminder of that historical shift in how the papacy presents itself.
So wrapping up this deep dive, looking back at CNN's report on the inauguration, a few things really stand out, don't they?
Definitely. That strong focus on the poor, on the vulnerable. The call for unity inside the church.
And the commitment to peace playing that role on the world stage.
And understanding those symbols helps too, I think. The pallium, the ring.
Yeah.
They tell us something about how he sees the role, the responsibilities.
Yeah, the pastoral care, the authority, that connection back through history.
Right.
So it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? You have this event steeped in ancient tradition, but facing very modern, very complex global challenges.
It's a fascinating mix.
And considering how these ceremonies themselves have evolved, how might Pope Leo's priorities, the ones he signaled, and his style, how might that shape the church's future?
That's the big question, isn't it? How does the institution navigate the 21st century?
It's that interplay between tradition and the demands of today. And this Mass, well, it gave us a first real glimpse into how this Pope might approach that balance. Definitely something to watch.